Welcome, everybody, into the Valley. I am Ethan Shutt, joined by my best friend, Philip Russell, and unfortunately not joined by my brother, Ryan.
That's in the chat, folks.
Unfortunately, due to real-life work travel schedules, Ryan wasn't able to join us this evening, but I can guarantee you we can summarize most of his points. Just imagine every 5 to 10 minutes, a small rant about how great campaign is and how he is the game-changing X factor that will slowly take the Suns to the title, win it for him in 4, and be the MVP. I think that summarizes most of what Ryan would have said. Philip, anything else I'm probably missing there?
Probably something about LaFraud, some pun that connects a LaFraud to campaign. I don't know. LaFraud getting run over by the pain train, something along those lines. And like, you think Draymond hurt you, wait till Cam brings the pain, something along those lines.
That sounds very Ryan. You're right. No, we will definitely miss having Ryan with us tonight. I don't think the work schedule should be too much of an issue come playoff time, but with the playoffs here, I'm guessing our recording frequency is probably going to spike. We're probably going to ditch the once a week and more than likely get rid of our longer form once a week episodes and replace them with some instant reactions post games. Even if those are, 10, 15, 20 minutes, at least give the people our thoughts for all you kind people out there listening. And for those that are in that group of kind people listening, we just want to say thank you again for riding with us. We've really enjoyed doing this. The Suns have given us an incredible season to follow and kind of recap every week. And we honestly couldn't be a whole lot luckier to have this season to be our first one to start on. It's been a lot of fun. And if you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, whatever, feel free to drop a review or a comment or whatever. If you're watching with us on YouTube, I love getting the ability to wave to you guys and say hello. Hop in the comments. Nothing crazy. We had some crazy stuff recently. People getting a little feisty up in there. Nothing but love or hatred towards the Lakers. That's okay too. But Philip, last night, we pushed this episode to today so we could talk about the Warriors-Lakers playing game. And I'm going to go ahead and just start by saying, what a fun game of basketball. You're the guy that's watched more Warriors games in the last however many years than anyone else I'm close to. How do you feel about last night's game? I guess as a viewer first, and then also as someone with a vested interest in the Suns.
As a viewer, it was everything I wanted it to be. As a partially biased viewer of Warriors basketball, it was almost everything I wanted it to be. I would have loved to see the Warriors squeak it out, especially with the game that Steph had. We all know the noise about Steph in big games. Steph was, with turnovers maybe being the exception, Steph was incredible last night. He was hyper efficient, 66% from 3 on a high volume, 9 3-point attempts, 37 points. He was just outstanding, as good as advertised. Bless you, Ethan. He's sneezing for those of you only listening.
Hey, I hit that mute button.
It was clean.
I'm proud of me.
It was
on that
clean
one.
as he leaned. He muted as he leaned. That's how you know we're pros, folks.
We made it 14 episodes in before the first on-air sneeze. I'm pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, so it was great. And it was a great ending. Love to see. Is it the Mark Jackson big time players make big time plays, and no bigger play than LeBron made last night. And it was just fun. It was a blast. When Steph hit the 3 right before halftime, I freaked out up here in my office. I was like running around trying to tiptoe because I think my wife was asleep by that point. But as a basketball fan, it was awesome. As somebody who is rooting for the Suns with all of my basketball heart, now that my beloved Bulls have been we'll say euthanized for this season. Thankfully euthanized for this season. It's tough.
And I'll be honest with you. We have a running text commentary amongst the three of us for every Suns game and most big games just in the league. And I remember having this kind of realization or epiphany last night. Like, this is the first time ever that I've been on the Steph side of a LeBron versus Steph battle. I love LeBron with his whining and his antics and his acting. I don't care. I love LeBron. So for the past however many years, I mean, we can at least go back 10 since the Suns were in the playoffs.
3 of you right now, Ethan.
Yeah, I bet you are, buddy. I've always been on the LeBron side. So this was weird. I've never actively cheered for Steph before. That was a weird feeling, but it was so fun, man. Like, I always have this just kind of hatred when he throws up a three that goes in. And when you're cheering for him, like, I get why the Warriors bandwagon got so weighed down. Like, I get it. If you didn't have a vested interest and you weren't a stakeholder anywhere, like, it makes total sense if you like fun basketball to cheer for that guy. Because I think I said it last night. He's the most fun basketball player to watch. Like, just incredibly fun. His dribbles are exciting like Kyrie's. His passing is like Steve Nash quality of just like eyes pop out of your head. How did he do that? And then the shooting is just, I mean, no one's ever done that before. And so
then, if you're a little bit nerdier too, you watch his off-ball movement.
He never stops,
for
man.
lack of a better term, it is so sexy.
He never stops.
There was a play last night. Van Gundy pointed out and was just like, "Oh, it's amazing." I didn't know what was happening with our boy JVG in that
getting excited, man.
Steph was going all over the place. He had the ball. He got rid of it. He runs along the baseline, basically gets a foot beyond the 3-point line, and then just darts backdoor because they're overextending.
I know. Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
He's gigabrain when it comes to basketball too. So it's like the complete package. But he's only, 6'3", which makes him absolutely electric to watch.
So we unfortunately came to the conclusion with, as much as the Warriors fought with heart, weren't quite able to get it done. I think it was a 3-point loss. I had friends. I had one of my best buddies and a big basketball fan out. He's actually in Brooklyn area now, out in New York. He was texting me throughout the game. He goes, it was, I think, second quarter. The Warriors were kind of looking feisty and on fire. And he said, so does this change how you feel about wanting to play the Warriors? Like, does this young, fiery team? And I said, it was a one-word reply. I said, no, not a chance. I said, there was never going to be a time where that Warriors team, even at their best, scared me the amount the Lakers do at their worst. Like, the Lakers were playing awful in the first half and we're down 9 or so. Like, that just showed the discrepancy there. And I'm going to try to do my best to not talk about how stupid it is that the Lakers are the 7th seed. I'll get it out once. It'll probably come back around. But every Suns fan, unless you are just absolutely mental, and I mean that with all the love in the world, guys, every Suns fan should have been cheering for the Warriors because that path would have been significantly easier. But, and Philip, I know that you've never experienced this on the Phoenix side of things. As a Suns fan, this is exactly what, I don't know if it's what we deserve, but it's what we should have expected. Break the playoff drought, have the best season in I don't know how many years, just to get stuck playing a 7 seed who happens to be the reigning champs, should have been a top 3 seed, and has arguably the best player in the world, followed by probably a top 5 player in the world. And, like, what are you going to do? So our goal for this intro episode, obviously once the playoff series starts on Sunday afternoon, these episodes are going to be more of recaps than anything, but we wanted to take this time to preview what is ahead. And I wanted to start, and I'm going to give a shout out to the fine folks at Yahoo Sports who put together a good preview article. And I'm just going to kind of use this, take some blurbs out of there to do an easy recap. But when you're talking about the head-to-head matchup of the Suns and the Lakers this season, the Suns won the season series 2-1. Now, if you're not a fan of either team or the NBA in general, you look at that and say, that's interesting. Phoenix probably has a shot here. Vegas will quickly tell you that that's not the way they see it, which we'll get to later. But in those 3 games, Anthony Davis missed game 1. LeBron James missed game 3. And neither of them played game 2. The Suns happen to be one of the healthiest teams in the league, if not the healthiest, when it comes to almost their entire starting rotation. I think their entire starting 5 missed, I think it was like 10 or 11 games, and half of those came within the last 2 weeks of the schedule. And if you're just looking at how the stars for the Lakers performed against the Suns when they were out there, we had... Anthony Davis going 42 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks and 3 steals in their 123-110 win without LeBron on the court. And in the one game LeBron did play, he had 38 points, 38, 5, and 6 on 67% shooting. So the very dumbed down version of that is when Anthony Davis and LeBron played against the Suns, they got theirs, and it really wasn't that close. So head to head, I think if you're being objective and honest here, even the regular season should have gone the Lakers' way in the 3 head-to-head matchups. Would you agree, Philip?
Yeah, and head to head, I think all you have to say is that they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and you have an automatic advantage. But then what gets scary and you could even see it last night, like they randomly bring in someone deep on their bench, and the dude they bring in is Wes Matthews. Just a good, solid player they can reach deep on their bench and bring in a guy like that who took a couple charges, hit a big shot. And they have talent and real veteran talent up and down their roster, where the Suns unquestionably have talent, but it's significantly younger than the Lakers' talent. So it's a matchup between two very talented basketball savvy teams. One team, the Lakers, are tried, tested, and have proven to be true. The Suns are the big question mark going into the series. How are these young guys going to step up against a big, physical, talented, tested team like the Lakers?
Yeah, and we talked kind of like, what are the Lakers going to look like come playoff time? And it was nice having the play-in game to see that, I think. You got to think that Monty and James and all of them are happy to see, like, all right, what do the Lakers look like when they have to play for real? It was pretty surprising, I think, to see the closing lineup they went with, which was Wesley Matthews, Alex Caruso, KCP, AD, and LeBron. But personally, I think that's even worse for the Suns, because I would love to have Dennis Schroeder out there. Personally, if you're looking at matchups, and I know you're going to talk about that more later, but what I watch as they close that game is like, crap, that's a 5 that makes sense against the Suns. And the thing is, the only like real obvious person you're like, oh, well, in terms of size, like at least you have Alex Caruso. And if you think Alex Caruso is bad at basketball, you don't watch basketball. Like, he is a meme, and that's great. Good on him. And when he has a dunk, the whole world goes crazy because he's white and bald. But if you were watching that game, you saw that defensively he can be an absolute menace and so annoying. And that is a guy that's tough to go against. And I would much rather Schroeder. And Wesley Matthews, same kind of thing, always going to be in the right place defensively. Offensively, kind of going to be a hit your shots type of guy, not too scared off the dribble. But that's the thing the Lakers need, more reliable shooting. So again, last night didn't make me feel good. The only thing that did make me feel good is watching an older team play a lot of minutes. LeBron played a lot of minutes, and he's coming off a high ankle sprain. Anthony Davis still isn't back to 100%. They've had multiple guys miss for COVID. So again, when you're looking at the potential for a long series, you got to think the Suns are in a good spot there. But a lot to talk about. Philip, I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit. I know you took the time to kind of structure out a step-by-step approach to analyzing Suns versus Lakers. So I'll let you take over.
Yeah. So here's what I did. Last night is the best version of the Lakers that we have to look at to think about what is this upcoming series going to be like, especially with them playing a smaller team. The Warriors have Kevon Looney, but then they don't have a ton of size that they're going to bring in off the bench. And I think that's what we all think is going to happen with the Suns as well. They're going to start with DA, but then Kaminsky and Saric, even if they do come in, they're not big hulking 5s. So it's a good test to see what they're going to be like. So here's how I broke it down. 3 main questions. What were the Lakers' statistical advantages last night over the Warriors? What were the disadvantages that they had last night? And then what did the eye test show you? Now, with basketball stats that matter, there's only one statistic. I'm going to let you guess, Ethan, and maybe you've already looked it up, where the Lakers have had a statistical disadvantage last night. And I'll give you a hint. It makes a whole lot of sense when they're playing Steph Curry.
Oh, 3-point percentage allowed, maybe?
3-point percentage and 3-point makes
shooting.
generally.
I was going to say just shooting in general, I would think.
Yeah, so the Lakers shot 10 of 31 for 32% from 3. The Warriors shot 15 of 34 for 44%, which is really good as a team. If you completely take Curry out of the mix, which isn't necessarily a great way to view that, they were still 9 of 25 for 36%. So they were pretty much even without Curry. So that's where the Warriors had the advantage. They were significantly more efficient. And then number of shots, number and percent of assists, number and percent of free throws, rebounds, fast breaks, turnovers, they all went the Lakers' way. All of them. Couple big ones that I think are really important. Number one is assists. The Lakers held the Warriors to 51% of their field goals being assisted. Now, if that lined up with their season average, that would be fine. The Warriors on the season usually averaged 64% of their field, or 64% of their field goals were assisted. So that means that the Lakers were putting the Warriors into positions where they were having to be playmakers, and not just Steph being a playmaker, but even a Michael Mulder, a Jordan Poole, and Andrew Wiggins. They were all having to make plays instead of just finishing plays from Draymond or Steph, which is a big deal when it comes to the Suns. That probably means guys like Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, Torrey Craig, they're going to have to make plays instead of just finishing them. So that's a big thing to watch. And then the fast break. The Lakers only had 14 points in transition last night, but during their comeback in the third and fourth quarter, they looked like a collective freight train on the fast break. And what I thought was the deadliest one was when LeBron, with whoever else is the third, was flanked by Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma flies in transition, and he gets out there with LeBron, and he can go to a corner. He's a decent shooter, or he can cut towards the basket. They looked dynamic on the break. So again, a couple things on that. If the Suns can increase the number of assists, that means they're probably getting better looks. If the Suns are getting better looks, they're probably going to be limiting the the Lakers in the fast break. And I think that will be huge because it's not a ton of points, 14 points in transition, but it stymied the Warriors.
It seemed like it all came at once too.
Yes.
And it was a lot of those Kuzma, LeBron fast breaks. You saw Caruso get on the action late. It was also, it coincided with the Warriors' turnover troubles that started in the third quarter that just completely derailed everything. So, and that's, the Suns have been great offensively in terms of a lot of assists, just across the board. A lot of players playing Monty's offense, the 0.5, the whatever, and making opportunities for other people. But we've also seen multiple games get derailed by Booker starting to lose his handle or other guys starting to do a little too much outside of the offense. And that's one of those things the Lakers they won't just capitalize, like they will just destroy you. Like the moment you get loose with it, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and the statistic even from last night that people are going to be looking at and probably talking about, and I know some Suns fans are already whining about, is the number of free throws. I thought the guys it was either Mike or Sam with the Timeline Pod tweeted something out that's really instructive for Suns fans. The Lakers play big. The Lakers play big. They're going to get a lot of points in the paint. They're going to be around the basket, which means they're going to get a lot of free throws. The Suns don't. With Devin Booker and Chris Paul being your primary playmakers, they're getting a lot of mid-range, a lot of open threes as well. I don't think there will be a free throw discrepancy in this series. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Just by play style, there should be a free throw discrepancy. And even last night, there should be a free throw discrepancy between the Lakers and the Warriors. So statistically, again, the big things to keep in mind, I think, fast breaks, assist percentage, and then rebounding. Can you keep the rebounding battle close? But where I went after that was, what did the eye test show last night? So like the stats are the stats, and we can make a lot or a little of those various stats. But what did you see last night from the Lakers? So what were a couple of your observations last night?
My thing is, and again, I'm watching all of this with the lens of how is this going to go against Phoenix? And the number one thing for me with the Lakers is that they're just big. Like they are a big athletic team, and they might be a little older, might have some guys battling injuries, but they are a big athletic team that when a bucket is needed can just pound it down low, which is going to equal either, like you said, free throws or high percentage shots. And that for me is what completely jumps off the page. And you think about their winning formula last season. They didn't win by draining threes and getting hot. They played playoff style basketball, which is slowed down, wait until they have the mismatch, and then attack.
Yeah, and both of these teams rank in the bottom third. The Lakers and the Suns rank in the bottom third for pace, which again means the Suns will need to be, and this is efficiency is important every game. The Suns will have to be hyper efficient in this series to stay close because this is the Lakers. They're a team that plays slow naturally. Will pick their spots to get out in transition, but will play slow, and they're good at it because
Yeah.
they're savvy. They're savvy veterans. Here's one thing last night that I took away. The Lakers defense has been lauded all season. They ranked number 1 in defensive rating, and it is all it's cracked up to be. Their defense was fantastic from Caruso to Wes Matthews sliding over on the help side to even little things that they do. So not to get too wordy with this, but in basketball, you have the ball is on the strong side of the court. And when they set pick and rolls and you have a ball handler going downhill towards the basket, there's a help defender that comes over from the weak side, which then what that means is when the ball goes to the opposite corner, one defender for like a half a second or maybe a second has to essentially play two guys. And the Lakers' wings are huge, and they were great at that last night. Their rotations were on strings. Their rotations were crisp, but even in those moments where it's one Laker guarding two Warriors, they were great because they were making the Warriors hesitate a little bit to say, am I going to take this relatively open three? Am I going to drive? And what it looked like the Lakers were doing is kind of pointing at whoever got the ball and said, you have to make this decision. You have to make this play, which goes back to what I said earlier about they're making the third and fourth options the playmakers rather than play finishers.
And that's one thing too. Like, you would expect those big guys defensively, to obviously they're taking up space. You're trying to make that decision hard by being in the right spot, playing your angles. But you didn't see the Warriors attacking those closeout defenders, which means they're scared. Maybe that's not the right word, but that is one of the, probably not basic, but I mean like junior high school is when you're in those spots, it's either you read it before the ball gets to you, you make the quick pass, or you attack the closeout defender. Same thing happens in soccer, same thing happens, whatever. You've got this advantage, you make the play. The Lakers have so much length, and that length just happens to be quick. It is so hard to attack that closeout defender because even if you get that half step that typically is all that it takes, they're going to recover. They will swing their hips. They will take that first big step. I'm physically doing this while talking, and they're going to get it because they have the reach and the quickness. And so you get blocked a couple times. I mean, I think, goodness, I remember at least 2 blocks in the third quarter where they tried to attack baseline and got blocked from behind. That happens once or twice. You're not inclined to do it. And so now it's, okay, do I take this quick shot in the corner, which the Warriors hit in the first half and didn't hit in the second, or do I make this extra pass? And what you saw happen was the entire offense would then recycle because none of these young guys who were flanking Steph and Draymond had the confidence to just do it. The young guys that performed well offensively in the first half were hitting open shots and were able to get some confidence. But the moment things got a little tough and the Lakers defense picked it up, you saw it crumble. And that's why I was never scared of the Warriors to begin with. And then the opposite side of things, you have a Lakers team that even the guys that are coming off the bench are just smart veterans. Like, sure, they may have lost a step. I mean, some of them shooting wise don't scare me at all, but they as a player scares me because they know when to make the right pass. They know when to attack a closeout. And that's just tough. Like, you're playing a team that has 2 top 5 players surrounded by smart playoff tested veterans. And that's a really hard thing to beat come playoff time when every possession matters just a little bit more, not for some storybook dramatizing dramatizing it, but like statistically speaking, every possession means more because there's less and it's slower. And to your point, I think the one stat that is going to be massive, going back to what you're talking about, is the rebounding battle. You saw so many Suns games swing in terms of momentum based on the Suns' ability to rebound on the offensive end. DA and Torrey Craig being the main 2 culprits there. That is going to be so much harder to do against the Lakers because outside of their quote best big rebounders, their wings have the same height and length that our guys do. And that's going to be a really interesting factor. And I think a lot of that comes down to effort. It's not like the NBA have 5 guys boxing out like you'd see from the scrappy March Madness teams. Like, a lot of it is you're going to be in the position you're in, who can go up and get it. Torrey Craig is the official sponsor of Go Up and Get It. Outside of him and DA, which DA is a coin toss, like, is he there? Is he not? If the Lakers are taking care of business on the defensive end, and let's not even imagine if they're starting to get some offensive boards like they did last night, that was another part. If you noticed, when momentum shifted, they were getting those extra possessions, and the Warriors just could not afford to let that happen.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I want to bring up with the eye test. So as we progress through this series, I think we'll probably have some more basketball highbrow things to discuss, like what we're seeing in these specific games. The last thing that I wanted to bring up was an intangible thing, and it's a question about 2 players for the Warriors who they didn't get the job done at the end of the game, but they were a huge reason why the Warriors were in the first place last night. Who will be the Jordan Poole or JTA for the Suns? Last night in the first half, JTA wanted every bit of Anthony Davis, and he wanted to take every open shot he got and knocked down a couple huge shots in the first half, so much so that the dude who was on a 2-way contract who just signed in the NBA turned around to someone at Staples Center and said, shush. Whoever he says shush to is probably more famous than he is, and he told him to shut their mouths and watch him work, which was great. I love that swagger from him. And then the play from Jordan Poole, where he got fouled. It didn't get called, but he definitely got fouled. And he made a cognitive decision to yam on LeBron James. If you go back and watch that missed dunk, he gets the step on his man. He looks to his left. He sees exactly who's coming at him, and his eyes get big, and he reared back and was ready to throw it down. And he got bodied, and it was a block, and it should have been called. But that's a big deal. That's a big deal because JTA had AD a little shook in the first half. The combination of JTA and Draymond playing super physical.
I know. Well, people don't usually go at him. And I thought the exact same thing. I said, there's some dogs on this Warriors team who do not care who they're playing against right now. And it'll be interesting. I think it's a great point because if you're looking through, let's look at who you think is the most likely on the Suns to be that. Who jumps out to you to fit that role where they've got the confidence to do that?
Javon Carter. I think Javon Carter, if you're looking at a guard who can get up in someone, the biggest problem is that JTA has size, and that was super helpful
and that's
last night. And I just looked, and I was like, CP3 obviously can have it. Mikal can have it. Jay Crowder maybe can have it. But I'd be looking at a Torrey Craig or Jay Crowder, I think.
And this is what concerns me personally. I think on the offensive end is where you need that, right? Like you're saying, you need it on the offensive end. I don't doubt the dog defensively in many of the Suns players.
Yeah.
I think offensively is where you're going to need it. And that's what concerns me because I think you need to have an irrationally high confidence to do that, right? Like
that Marcus Smart.
I mean, you need to have someone that thinks they can do more than they probably can.
Yeah.
And for me, I look at Campaign. I think Campaign can be a dude like that who you go to the bathroom in the middle of the second quarter and come back. You're like, what? I'm sorry, what? Campaign just went on a 9-0 run by himself? Sure, because that dude has the confidence to make that happen. And I agree, like dudes like Javon on the defensive end have it. I think he's getting there behind the 3-point line where he says, if I'm on, I'm on, and that's great. But offensively, outside of Chris and Book, I don't see a lot of dudes who have that supreme confidence. And then if you want to take it one step closer to the actual root of the problem, how many of those guys have the confidence to create for themselves?
Right.
And that's where I think Campaign continues to push ahead in that argument because we saw it from Mikal in the last 3 weeks, but I don't know if that sample size is enough for me to think he's going to do it in the playoffs. To his credit, he played confidently offensively against LeBron in the past. He's looked good. I mean, go back and watch the bubble. Like those guys can play with confidence against the big competition. But I don't know if that's going to be there. I hope it is. I don't see it from Cam Johnson. Honestly, like I hope he hits his open threes. I think that's the best thing he can do. Jay Crowder's the same way. He's not going to create for himself, but hopefully he hits his open threes. And Torrey Craig, we've seen him create for himself, but that's always when Book and Chris are on the bench. You don't see him doing that when there is that dominant presence handling the ball. So that's what scares me. That really scares me is what happens when this big athletic defensive team has kind of clamped down the two go-to ball handlers, the two that run the offense, facilitate, and make life easier on the rest of the guys. What's going to happen then? And if I had to put money on someone breaking the mold and doing something to change it, I would hope it would be Bridges, just because he's got the amount of minutes that I think it necessitates to see something like that happen. I do think Cam Payne's going to get a lot more minutes than some people expect. I think he is going to be the first off the bench and not going back very soon. And the one thing, the Achilles heel that we still haven't really touched on is if the Lakers play like the Lakers, which you did a fantastic job describing, which is getting a lot of fouls inside, continuing to plow. I mean, the LeBron James steamroller layup, like he just says, please get in my way and see what happens. That's a recipe for disaster for DeAndre Ayton fouls, right? Like if I am anyone with the Lakers and I'm thinking, all right, what's the quickest way to get the Suns out of this game? It's 2 quick fouls on DeAndre Ayton within the first 5 minutes, right? So worst case scenario here, I don't think there's any disagreement between the two of us that is the biggest weak point for the Suns, right? The depth at 5, just the big depth in general. What do you think the Suns do if DeAndre Ayton is not playing at as close to his ceiling as possible? Because to me, I think if DA is not in the 15 and 10 range every game, you're immediately going to be in trouble. What do you do to combat that?
It might be run. You might just have to get up, get out and go and try to muck up the defense and try to get stuff going downhill and get open threes before the defense can get set. We've talked about it on this pod. If you get Booker and Mikal out in transition, that's a formidable duo getting out and running. And then if they're flanked by Crowder on the wings and then Chris Paul coming down as secondary transition, that's the only thing that I can see. If DA's not playing well, I don't see a scenario where the Suns can survive a half court game without DA logging 36 to 38 good quality minutes. And that's a lot of pressure to put on the young man. And that's just what makes this such a tough series, is that so much is going to ride on him. And what we saw last night, and what the statistics of this, I have some of the stats lined up too. The Lakers are at their best when Andre Drummond is not on the court. Which on one hand is a blessing for the Suns, because Drummond plus AD, how do you defend Drummond and AD if you're the Suns? But then the curse of that is the matchup might look better size-wise on paper, but the Lakers' offensive efficiency goes up significantly when Drummond goes off the court, and then that automatically means Anthony Davis is going to be guarded by DeAndre Ayton the entire time.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the things I legitimately, I think this is the worst possible matchup. I don't think that's crazy to say. DeAndre Ayton is incredibly vital to the Suns' success on the defensive end. I think luck somehow found the worst possible matchup for him. He against Jokic, you're still going against an MVP big, but Jokic's strengths aren't going to be catch it at the perimeter, blow by you type stuff. Anthony Davis and LeBron James both can do that. The stuff that we saw, I would say midseason, when Ayton was still kind of looking a little rocky. I think the Brooklyn Nets collapse is a great example of that, where it's like, oh crap, he's getting blown off the 3-point line when having to switch onto a guard. Anthony Davis can do that to you at his size, which is stupid. And that's what concerns me almost as much as just, hey, DA and Anthony Davis are battling down low. Let's see what happens. What really scares me is when Anthony Davis pops out of the 3-point line, because now DeAndre says either I'm going to give him the space so I don't get blown by. Counter argument here, Anthony Davis can shoot. Cool, I play him up tight. Anthony Davis can blow by me. Or you get a pick and you get a switch done, and then you're just in trouble, right? Because matchups in terms of, I don't know, do you think they're just going to try to, can you switch screens against the Lakers? Like, it's impossible, right? There's no way. So you can't switch the screens. So what do you do, right? I guess you just try to hedge hard on everything high and then hedge and recover. And for those listening, basically hedge and recover is when there's a screen being set. If you're switching the screen, you just switch people you're guarding, basically. If the guy screens you, you stick with him. The other guy switches to the ball handler primarily. Hedging is you get basically the screen on you. Your teammate goes and puts just enough pressure to slow the ball handler down. And then as soon as you have time, you guys switch back. The problem is I don't think you can do that with the Lakers. I mean, do you think that's viable, Philip, or do you think you just have to fight through every screen?
The Warriors did that some last night. What I think the Suns will probably try to do, because the Lakers aren't a great shooting team, is play the screens physically, hammer the guy who sets the screen while going under. So go under it while the hedge is happening, hands high, and then it's just going to be a matter of that help side, whatever side the roller is rolling on, being able to stop that pass and then recover back. But even last night, you could see the Lakers will be very patient in trying to pick that apart. They were trying to get LeBron on Steph a couple times, and they were using KCP to do that because of his shooting acumen. And you even saw it down the stretch where LeBron hits KCP in the post, and then he has the wherewithal. He knows he gets in trouble to throw it back. So they'll try to pick it apart like that. They're going to try to get Chris Paul guarding LeBron as much as they can, and it'll be up to the Suns to come up with really creative things to do with Mikal to let him roam and be a good help side defender, and then creative things to do with DA to allow him to be a help side defender without allowing Anthony Davis to get a bunch of easy alley-oops over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Monty's got something good, And the problem with the playoffs, though, you have some great plan. You usually only catch someone off guard once, right? You get one game to maybe catch them off guard before something switches. Maybe you get lucky and you're coaching against Budenholzer or whoever who doesn't know how to change up anything on either side of the ball, and you get lucky. But more than likely, that's not going to happen when LeBron James is smarter than probably most NBA head coaches. So I don't know, man. I hate to say it. I feel like the Vegas odds are probably pretty accurate. But here's my try to be optimistic as a Suns fan thing. If we can do that, if you had told me going into this season with all the new pieces and Chris Paul and changing so much that the Suns were able to be the 7 seed or the 6 seed and play the 2 or 3 seed Lakers, I feel like a lot of people would be okay with that. The Vegas odds would make sense. No one's, having too much of a fuss. It just gets so much harder to deal with when you realize the Suns had the season they had, 50-plus wins in a shortened season, and get stuck playing the most dominant team in the West, who happens to be a 7 seed. That's a tough pill to swallow from a Suns fan who has dealt with some real Lakers crap in his past. So I don't know.
We'll need somebody to come through with the Raja Bell, little armbar, boom, on LeBron James, knock him out this series.
Look, I mean, you're joking, but the physicality between these two teams was very high in the regular season. I expect a very, very, very chippy series. You've got a lot of dudes on both of those sides who are hotheads, very explosive, and really like to run their mouth. So I'm expecting a hot series. And the problem with that is that will go the Lakers' way. Because if one of these teams gets in foul trouble, it's a much bigger blow to the Suns than it would be to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because you say the Suns' strength, one of their big strengths is their depth. The problem is they have a collective depth, but they don't have positional depth.
Yep.
The Lakers, on the other hand, have positional depth. It might be a bigger drop off, but they still have pieces to run the offense and defense the way they want to. The Suns don't have that luxury.
So last thing I'm curious about from your perspective. I just have a different perspective. I obviously want the Suns to win so we can keep doing podcasts about things that are actually happening with the Suns and not projecting forward. But gun to head, what is your prediction for this series?
I don't wanna. If I had to, my decision would be either Lakers in 6 or Lakers in 7. And that's not matchup based. That's not Suns based. That is LeBron James based. Statistically speaking here, there has never been, I think there are three times ever in like the modern basketball era, going back to like 60s or 70s, where neither the 1 or 2 seed in the conference was favored to win it. This is one of those years. On top of that, even though statistically the home team or the higher seed is projected to win, or it statistically does win, between 70 and 85% of series, this is such an anomaly. This is so different. And so LeBron's never lost in the first round. It'd be pretty shocking to see it happen now. Playing against a team that has outperformed expectations, which those teams usually don't do well in the playoffs, and have outperformed expectations with incredible health and incredible youth, unseasoned in the playoff youth. That's a big concern. So I think if I try to not be biased here and just look at what's in front of me, Lakers in 6 is probably what I would put my money on.
If I had to put money, I think I would go Lakers in 5, but I would have a caveat and say I think it'll be a really respectable 5. Like there were even a couple of if you remember back to the Warriors Cavs finals, there were a couple of those finals when the Warriors had KD where the games, I think it might have been the first year, the games were really close. Like they were usually down to the wire, but the Warriors still won in 5 one year and then 4 in the next, which then you look and you say, okay, the Warriors swept them or the Warriors won in 5. It wasn't a close series, but the games themselves were competitive and very good games. I can see that happening just by nature of how slow the pace of play is. But I think trying to be as objective as possible, and even what we saw last night, when the rubber meets the road down the stretch, I'm going to trust the Lakers more in a close playoff game than I'm going to trust the Suns. And I would say this caveat, I hope Devin Booker and Chris Paul can make me feel like an idiot for thinking that, but my money's down Lakers in 5.
I want to leave us with one bit of optimism going back to the eye test and what we saw last night. If the Lakers play like they did last night, they will not win the series. I will confidently say that. If they play like they did last night, if the Suns were playing the Lakers and the Lakers had the first half they did, the Suns would not be up 10 or 11 at halftime. They'd be up 25 or 30. And I am 100% confident of that. The Suns will take advantage of the sloppy defense and the turnovers and whatever. They've been great at that. They play down to their opponent a lot, but they have done a good job of taking advantage of mistakes. And this is like the one thing when you go back to the stats of Lakers versus Warriors, what did the Warriors do better? The one thing the Suns should do better is shoot the 3. And that is one of the things that I think the Suns should hope for. Is the Lakers don't really have any guy that scares me getting hot behind the 3-point line. They've got some decent shooters, don't get me wrong, but this isn't the Clippers where they have 9 guys averaging over 40%, right? Even LeBron's crazy shot to end the game, that's a shot when he put it up, that shot probably won't go in, 8 times out of 10, maybe 20% from there, right? And that's just because he's LeBron. Anyone else, it's 10%. I'm not scared of them behind the 3. And so maybe that's something the Suns try to do. They pack the paint and they say, hey, we're going to have at least 2 help defenders at all times for any drive. And you give up the kick, you give up the open shot, and you make the Lakers beat you from behind the 3. We've seen teams who are better than other teams implode in the playoffs due to missed 3-point shooting. It is a lot easier for a team to get streaky, good or bad, from 3 than it is to see them implode at the paint. I'm curious to see what that will bring. I'm curious to see if the Suns are able to hit their threes like they have all year, or if they miss their threes, I think they're toast. And that's not, I guess my optimistic point ended pretty quick. If the Suns don't hit the threes, they're dead, right? Like that's just, it is what it is. Even with two of the best mid-range shooters in the game, if the Suns aren't hitting the threes, they're dead. If the Lakers hit the threes, the Suns are also dead. There's going to be a lot to see between a pretty stark contrast between what we see in the regular season between both of these teams. I don't think it could be a worse matchup. Sorry to be pessimistic once again, but man, I'm nervous. I'll be honest though, we could be playing the Wizards, some team who like scraped into the playoffs in the East. I would still be nervous as a Suns fan. That is how I've been raised as a Suns fan. That said,
Can I keep it a buck with you real quick?
Go ahead, man.
I got receipts from the trade deadline about the Wizards. I know this is a Suns podcast, but so we're recording this right now towards the tail end of the Wizards-Pacers game, and Daniel Gafford went off.
I was going to say, I saw they were up like 20.
He had a bunch of blocks. This is from the trade deadline. You guys were trying to gas me up about all the great trades the Bulls wound up making.
Sorry.
It's all right.
We tried to be good friends, man.
Here's what I said about that. I'm sad about Gafford, but I guess I'm happy we're making moves. I have the receipts right here. And what does he do? He gets his team in the playoffs. I'm not going to make this a Bulls thing. It's just Daniel Gafford. I believed in you all along. So when you hit me up, I'm one of your boys. Anyways,
I'll make sure to let him know. I'm guessing he is listening to a D tier Suns podcast on probably the biggest night of his life. But no, like we said, our schedule is going to be a little different moving forward. We ask that you just bear with us. But we also would love to pick up our engagement and our involvement from the listeners. So even if you are one that typically listens on podcasts or whatever, hop over on the YouTube video. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to look at us if you don't want to, but hop in the comments, give us your thoughts after each game. I know we're going to be doing recaps and trying to get them up first thing in the morning. Like, talk to us. Let us know what you're thinking. Hopefully the Suns will make us eat our words. I hope me saying Lakers in 6 looks stupid. I hope Philip saying Lakers in 5 looks really stupid. But no matter what happens, we appreciate you guys. We appreciate you listening. Hopefully this episode was beneficial to you guys as you watch the series up ahead, kind of seeing how each of these teams play. I guess you just got to hope for the best, man. I have to legitimately, I was talking to my wife last night and I said, baby, I just need you to listen for like 10 minutes because I'm really sad. And it was right after the game ended and she was half asleep. I said, this was supposed to be the year where I got to be a happy Suns fan with a 2 seed. And it's like we're going up against a buzzsaw in round 1. And she goes, you're the 2 seed. That's great. I said, it is great, but it's also not great. And that is how I felt. I should be thrilled that my team's in the playoffs for the first time in however many 10 years, 11 years. This is a tough reunion with the playoffs, right? I mean, Suns fans, I think collectively are all groaning and very sad. I hope they pull off a win on Sunday. Even if they lose in 5, I hope they win Sunday. Come out. The arena is going to be rocking. I know a lot of my Twitter friends who are there in Phoenix are going to be there. I know it's going to be loud. I'm pumped that playoff basketball is back. I hope it's an amazing environment. If you guys that are listening are going, be extra loud for us. Get a win Sunday. Boy, that'd be wonderful. I'm smiling already just thinking about it. Man, that would make me so happy. Philip, I need all the good vibes, buddy. Don't be realistic. Don't be objective. Go Suns.
Suns in 4, baby.
Suns in 4, baby. All right. Well, I'm going to end with that so that if it happens, we can clip it really easily. But look, Philip, thank you for doing this. I know this is a later recording than usual. If you're listening, guys, thank you so much for being a part of this with us. I am Ethan Schutt with Philip Russell. This is Into the Valley of Phoenix Suns podcast.
We out. Go Suns!